Hi.
Okay, folks, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Thank you for your cooperation. Just kidding. You thought that I would give up my levity since you first saw me, remember? Because I made a joke about Wendy, from Young Frankenstein. Remember Pavluka, the character, and every time they called her name, the horses were winning? And I asked Wendy if that's what happens, and she goes, "You missed your calling, Ed." Get back to work. Okay. Enough of that.
Yeah, for
Here we go. Okay, are there any announcements? Right, not hearing any. John, who is with us electronically?
As far as that, nobody is.
Thank you, sir. Right. With the motion to approve the agenda,
Second.
the moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. The agenda is approved. Public forum. Anybody wishing to speak? We could do this. Yes, ma'am.
we would like to speak.
Let's go ahead and,
Oil?
is it a particular issue or, we could wait for that, or would you like to speak now? It's fine with me either way.
We just were gonna ask for your support
Indeed.
and thank you for, all the things that you do, especially hopefully you'll continue the plant survey on Lake Elmo Lake.
Oh, yeah.
First up, I'm Wendy Griffin. I'm president of the Lake Association. And I'm here tonight. We are applying for the 3M PFAS grant. For doing a full lake treatment and then maintaining it for the next 3 years. Full lake treatment. So is this
Regarding
something you want to wait up?
Long Lake,
Lake Elmo.
Lake Elmo, okay. We'll talk about that shortly. I believe it's on the agenda. No, it's not. Talk about it real quick.
Okay,
That's fine.
we're applying for this grant through the 3M PFAS, Minnesota DNR, Met Council.
Okay.
And we're here, we would like to list you as cooperators with us on this grant. And one of the things we're looking at, because we are doing a 3-year plan, is that hopefully you will continue with the plant survey to help offset the cost. And you've done it in the past, and we greatly appreciate that. Also, we greatly appreciate the fact that we have access to Meg Ratty and John Hansen for our technical support, which is huge. So we're in the process of writing the grant. I talked to Meg today and asked her if she would be willing to look over our grant once we've completed it. She sent us a letter or an email about Lake Elmo.
She in California or is she back?
Yes, nope, she's still out.
Still out there, okay.
Yeah. So for money to do a 2026 deal on the lake with, I'm not sure it's milfoil. I think it's another
Hybrid,
another invasive that's on there. That's not very big yet and it hasn't grown very much yet.
okay.
Now, we might be able to do that, the curly pondweed with the grant and the chemical treatment that we're doing. We work with Patrick Seltzer from PLM. I think
Okay.
you guys have PLM too, don't you? Think?
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and they did the fluoride treatment. He's talking about doing that on Lake Alamo for the full lake treatment, which would only be in the littoral area of the lake, because the lake is so deep. There's only milfoil, both the hybrid and the Eurasian milfoil that grows in the littoral area.
Floridone, right?
Florida, yes, I'm sorry, Florida.
Okay, you said Florida.
Well, it started with the F.
That's quite all right. Yes, indeed. I don't know what would be required of us, but I'm certainly on board. I
Okay,
don't know if we need to make a motion.
well, you know what?
Mhm.
We might be back in 2 weeks with a letter
Okay,
of your support, and we would be looking for a motion then.
yes, sir.
Well, I think similar to the Beaver grant, like John wrote a letter of reference supporting that at St. Anthony Falls. We could do a similar thing here.
But that would be greatly
Put in
appreciated.
an application and
Beaver Heads notwithstanding, we want to know more about them. So it's a good thing.
Yeah. So I'm just, and actually, in all honesty, I haven't been to a Valley Branch meeting in a few years and I apologize for that. You guys. are
Wendy, we did miss you.
I figured you did.
That's
where you went.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. And
I
so,
did, however, watch the last two of the meetings, so I know you've discussed these.
Oh,
So
no,
I think all we want to bring, yeah, it was a fun meeting last week, I'll tell you. And so I think what we want to do is kind of bring, it's a letter of intent first. And we're just putting your names on it. So I don't know if you need a motion or not to say yes, or you need to see what is in the letter of intent before you can say, yep, our names can be on it. If so.
That would be
bring
my
it to-
recommendation, that
Yeah.
before the managers.
thank you,
get behind
Counselor.
something that-
Yes, that's great, yeah,
and,
you're way ahead of me,
and John will help us with that letter.
indeed.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, sir.
Well, we're actually taking work off your plates because I know that Lake Elmo was one of the ones that you talked about initially, so we're helping.
So the, Mr. President, managers, the letter of intent that the board approved at Lake Elmo was for common reed
That's
eradication
right.
on the South Shore and mostly on, Washington County Park.
Yeah, and that was Bar and Patrick, and they let us know that was the one that you had submitted, but we didn't drive that one, but we're driving an additional one for the Northwell.
Very good.
And also the Washington County Parks is on board too.
Okay, good.
Yeah, well, they're the largest landowners. So. And we've been working with the parks, so yeah.
We want everybody on board.
Yes, we do.
Yes, yes. And yes, we do want to continue with the plans. And we'll do that presentation recently, all the way from California,
Yeah.
in the bad weather to deliver, and it was real good.
I actually just stumbled across that yearly report that Bar does for you guys, and it's fantastic, the level of detail that's in there, the continuity, the
Thank
history.
you.
I was actually extremely impressed and not easily impressed, so.
So Mark Twain once said, I could live for 2 months on a good compliment.
Oh, there you go. Just extended your life for you.
Right then. Okay. Thank you, ladies. Are we good to go?
John, I know,
Yes, sir.
during the last meeting, we were talking about grants that we were going to apply for. Is that coming from the same pool? Is there any way, since we have constituents that are, I mean, I don't know if it would be helpful at all to have us actually apply for the grant instead of having them do it?
Mr. President, Major Armstrong, there's $20 million in this pot of money to distribute, so I know some entities are submitting letters of intent for projects that are in the $3 million range. In the past, Valley Branch Watershed District, when it comes to aquatic plant management, has had the lake associations lead those efforts rather than the Watershed District Board. So to be consistent with those past efforts, I think it'd make more sense for Lake Elmo Association to lead in this grant application.
Okay.
Thank you. Satisfied?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you, Mr. Bill. Okay. That said, we're going to continue. Did you have anything, Mr. Lennon?
I think John just answered it. I was gonna inquire about doing something watershed wide towards that grant, but based on John's comments,
Very good.
we'll run individual.
Thank you. Okay. We're on the right track here. All right, so let's move on to the consent calendar. Are there any items that any of the managers would like to pull?
Item C and C E was the letter, right? Or I believe E.
Okay, you'd like B and E pull.
You'd like to pull the treasurer's report?
Oh, definitely, yes, sir. Okay. I'm gonna pull everything because I would like to pull item F. Like some more information on that. So that leaves us with A, E, D, and G. Would you like to make a motion?
I'll move approval of items A, B, D, G, and H. Is that right? Yeah. On the-
No, A, he wants to pull that.
Oh, we're pulled H, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I
All
motion
right, I'll
is
second that motion. It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That is approved. Let's move to item C, Mr. Brock.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with this and, the applicant has not submitted a variance request, I'm not looking at changing anything, but it just, 2 weeks ago, I had a discussion with Susanna and John on, easements on, both the 100-year flood levels and on BMPs. And I may have misheard, Susanna, but it sounded like even on some of these smaller BMPs like rain gardens, that we might be able to do a maintenance agreement and attach it to the deed in some way for perpetual, use. And so, again, I'm not looking to change anything on this one, but I thought this would be a good example of what that might be if we were ever able to do something like that. So I wanted to ask Susanna for her opinion on that.
Counselor?
Yeah, and thank you, Manager Brock, for giving me a heads up before the meeting, because what I was able to do, I'm just gonna pass this out. This is a high overview. I went through your rules, or the Valley Grants rules, and just looked at the points that say, where does it talk about maintenance agreements, where does it talk about easements? So there may be more nuance than this. But really, a maintenance agreement is required when there's some type of BMP or other stormwater treatment facility in the property, which really all permits probably have some kind of stormwater maintenance plan, because they triggered the need for a Valley Branch permit most of the time. And so really the purpose of that maintenance agreement is to let future property owners know there's something on that property that needs to be maintained. It is recorded against the legal description to the property. So I know people like to say attached to the deed. It's not attached to the deed per se, but anyone who looks at that property is going to see that there is a requirement. And I'm comfortable with not too specific legal description as to where those stormwater maintenance facilities are. So it's easier for the property owners to complete and get recorded. The easement, I feel strongly that an easement needs to have a specific legal description. Somebody needs to be able to walk that easement because it's a very, it's a right to use that they are giving to the district, and that would effectively put some restrictions in place. Like you can't, let's say it's over that rainwater garden, you can't build over that rainwater garden, right? The maintenance agreement says what maintenance needs to happen in perpetuity, but the easement is really doing a restriction. What the Valley Branch rules require, or is in the permit at hand, is an easement over the stormwater maintenance facilities and any land on that property that's below the 100-year flood elevation. So for some property owners, especially private single-family residences, that can be a bit of a burden because they have to pay for a survey. And that typically happens after the project is completed because you can't do the survey until you know exactly where it's been, right? Plans can change as whatever project happens is being implemented. So after they're done with their surveyor, oftentimes they have to go back and spend $2,000 to $3,000 to get a survey and a sketch. So that was part of the conversation that we had, and what are some of the bases for both of those requirements. There are some other examples of watershed districts that do require the easement in addition to the maintenance agreement. South Washington is one of them. But there are, I would say, majority of watersheds in the state do not require both documents, an easement and a maintenance agreement. So I just wanted to go into your rules. Now, the rules say that the managers may waive the easement requirement, and the example is sand blankets, but it doesn't give any other criteria. So do they have, the managers have authority to waive it? I think you do, it's in your rules. But I'm very, very anxious about advising the managers to do it because I don't want it to be arbitrary. Right? I think there should be a reason and justification as to why. And typically I would prefer to have the property owner submit a variance application to say they don't have to follow that rule. So that's kind of the rough synopsis of my overview, and based on Manager Brock letting me know he was gonna pull it just for this issue, so it may be a much larger conversation, but that's my overview of 2 cents.
And it is a larger conversation, but I just thought since we had this, it's a good example of some of what we were talking about. So, and we're going to discuss this later in the meeting, so we are. So with that, that's all I had for discussion on that.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve permit number 2025 dash.
I'll second that motion. It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Hi.
it is approved. Thank you, sir. Let's move on to our next item. That would be E. University of Minnesota grant applications for the legislative commission on Minnesota resources.
Yeah, that was me.
Yes, sir.
John did a great job of drafting two different versions of the letter I saw. And personally, I think it was the first version. I didn't know, it seemed like we had 2 letters and one of them needs to get sent.
And President Manager, it's a little bit confusing. The University of Minnesota is submitting 2 grant applications.
Oh,
One grant is to do a census of where beavers are in the state of Minnesota.
okay.
The other grant is to do some physical and computer modeling of the benefits and problems maybe that beaver dams create.
Okay, all right. I
That's
thought
what
we
it's
had to, we had to pick one of the 2 for our instructed president to send. And so indeed, so that sounds like it's 2 different. Not good for that, so.
I think it's excellent because you have a little beaver program, removed, but certainly we know their benefits.
Or detriments,
Yeah.
so this is just bring more science to that sometimes vague situation.
That's a good way to.
So we want to utilize their services, so to speak, to benefit all of us. Our engineering. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay,
So
so
I'll make a motion that we approve item E on the consent calendar.
Second.
it's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
Hi.
it is approved. Thank you. Now, let's move on to item F, which is item. Okay, this one's very interesting. My concern here is, John, I don't want you to take too much time on this, but let me understand this. We are involved in cleaning up, so to speak, and replanting 1 acre for this particular group. And they want $10,000 from us, is that correct?
Mr. President, that's the request.
Okay. How close are they to a body of water?
Mr. President, I believe the Conservation District included a figure, but I guess it might not show that, if you go to about the 5th page of the handouts, you can see the yellow area, arrow pointing out the site, and you can see where the St. Croix Watershed District is. And the Watershed is compared to that, it's like 4 blocks, St. Clair with.
All right. Now, perhaps I missed it, but anything on phosphorus removal?
Thought something that was
Show me
like
something.
little or none.
Yeah,
Is what I recall.
I think so.
I don't know, Mr. President, I didn't study this application, you hire Washington County Action District to administer the program.
Oh, that's the concern that I have. And again, we're all for, bringing in native plants and doing what we do. However, $10,000 is a bit of money, in case everybody's aware. And, finally, I don't mean to sound pretentious, but if we're gonna put out that kind of money, I see that they have their own plaque. I would certainly like to see some signage from us, however that's instituted. Again, I'd like some recognition. If that makes any sense to any of the managers.
I agree, and it's in a very visible location on the trail.
Right, so. With that said, my initial thoughts are to table this particular one and get some information and see if we can have that happen. And perhaps more details about what it is, they're going to do. And again, you know, no phosphorus removal and, how beneficial is this gonna be? And I understand that it's part of an ongoing project because there's much more acreage. What is it, 21 acres? It's a strip. So it'd be nice if there was more land, you know, for $10,000. So if the managers have anything, I would welcome any comments or observations. Say it. I'm kidding.
I'd agree with your assessment on this.
I
I think we
appreciate
should get some more
that, sir.
information.
I agree also.
All right then. With that said, I would like to make a motion. Table this. Have it revisited. So that we can get more information about what they're doing and perhaps include us with some signage. If that's possible. Do I have a second?
The second,
It's been moved and seconded.
aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. So we'll follow up on that one. And, John, ask, Mr. Stoffelsted, if I pronounce his name properly. If he'd like to visit with us, that would be nice. Okay. Now, the treasury report.
Yes,
Rick.
I wanted to bring the board's attention to two changes that have been made. One of them is in the water quality section. In the original report, the Downs Lake Water Quality Improvement Study showed $8,876 $50. That actually belongs in the item above it, the Valley Creek mainstream restoration. So that change was made in the system, and the report you received tonight reflects that. The other item here is, is on the list of checks that we're dispersing tonight.
Right.
And that is, the third from the bottom, the Safeguard Business Systems is now listed as voided. There was some questions about, the information that was provided, and so we're getting that squared away, and once that's squared away, the bill will come back.
Also, I have a little item on that. Ms. Bonnie sent a email regarding us having information from another watershed district. Has been included in something. Nothing of the sort on that, maybe?
I didn't hear about that.
Okay.
Hmm.
I'm being silly, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
All right, so we're squared away there. All right, we'd like to make a motion, sir?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the treasurer's report from March 7th.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
It is approved. Thank you, gentlemen. That concludes our consent calendar. Now we'll move on to updates of the question, partner volunteer system advisory committee for engineer. Cost share program. I know this, Elizabeth Thompson is not here, but this is, academic, right? I mean, we've gone over this.
Yes, Mr. President, Alyssa asked if she should be in attendance tonight, and I thought that the managers have discussed this so many times in the past that she might be able to
That's fine.
enjoy her Thursday evening some other way. So, including your girl, yeah, including your packet is the updated cost share program details. The managers did give her feedback at the last meeting, and she's made some changes to the programs to reflect those comments.
He did. I went over this, and I have a curiosity before any of the other managers have something. Regarding the shoreline restoration cost share policy. The inspection costs, is this something that we incur? Done annually or biannually?
Mr. President, typically, the Watershed District contracts with Washington Conservation District to administer the program and work with the landowners. And so they, under their contract, they're the ones that do the inspection. The Valley Branch Watershed District is paying Washington Conservation District to do that annual inspection.
Okay, and that's part of that 55,000?
Yes.
Budget? Yeah. Okay. All right, I hope that's not too costly because we get tied down with our budget on a lot of inspections. So I know it has to be done.
Yeah, Mr. President, I think the philosophy there is that if you're giving somebody a significant amount of taxpayer funds, you want to make sure that it operates as designed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good. Are the managers okay with that?
Mhm.
You require anything from us? Give me direction, or shall we make a motion to approve it?
I request that the managers make a motion.
Okay.
They
I'll move approval of these 4 policies as presented to us tonight.
Second that motion. It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
That is approved. Please let Ms. Thompson know. Thank her for all her work, all her hard work. And tell her that there's more communities than just Afton.
So Lake St. Rick Beach tonight.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness. Okay. This one's interesting. Easement policies for Valley Branch Watershed District permitted projects. Lead us into this one, sir.
Mr. President, managers, you talked about this in the past and as earlier discussed, Manager Brock, Attorney Torseth and I met a couple weeks ago and talked about it in a little bit more detail, and I'll just turn it to Manager Brock.
The whole issue, really started on about the 100-year flood easements that we take. Attached to this memo, there's some background information. But in a nutshell, and maybe you've heard this before, John certainly has, Susanna has, but I'll use my own property as a hypothetical example. When I rehabbed our farm place there, I didn't meet the 1 acre threshold to need permit, but if I had, I would have had to get a Valley Branch permit for that. I will say I incorporated all the BMPs, Jeff, even though I didn't have a permit. I had silt fences and everything done. But that said, in the back of my property across there's a fairly major water course. And I'm not sure if it has the 100-year designation on it or not, but it could. And if it had, and if I did need to get that permit, before I could close that permit out, I would have had to hire a surveyor. I know, a couple $1,000, who knows how much to designate that 100-year. And then I would have to hire an attorney to prepare an easement and have that recorded at the courthouse on behalf of Valley Branch. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the work that I would have been doing on the other side of my property. There's no connection between the two. And So it just, as we've kind of gone through these permits, and I'll say on large developments and that sort of thing, I really don't necessarily have any heartburn there. But again, as Susanna said, we aren't treating everybody equal. But I've talked to a number of people, that I know in watershed districts from other parts of the state, and granted, they're more rural, but they're like, you're doing what? It appears to me like it's almost a ticket where we're requiring this easement, requiring them to spend all the money to get it and record it for our benefit, and has nothing to do with what they came to us to get a permit for. And so it appears to me almost like we're taking these easements because we can, and we're not compensating them for any diminished value of their property because there's now an easement on it where there wasn't before. So there's just a number of things, and I'm kind of surprised we haven't been challenged on it in the past. But I could easily see how we could, and I don't know how we would defend it, and it's in our rules, and our rules went through the process and everything, but still, we might win on some technical basis, but we could certainly lose in the court of public opinion, when it hits the newspaper and gets explained, well, what we've been doing.
It's a money grab.
Well, in my mind, it kind of is.
You said that about us one time.
Yeah. So anyway, we've started the discussion, and and as part of that, and I'll just throw this in as a separate thing, at our when we met, that's when it came up about the possibility of using maintenance agreements for some of the more minor BMPs, that on a property, versus, doing the easements and everything, for the future on those BMPs. So that's why I brought that one up today, because that's seemed to fit what we were hypothetically discussing. But anyway, I believe the only thing for tonight was just to decide we want to move ahead with this discussion and have John dig into it deeper and start coming up with, because there's a lot of little, as we've discussed it, it's not a simple thing. There's a lot of little intricacies.
Yeah, policy and rules.
Yeah, and so anyway, I'll answer any questions anybody has. Again, I'm the one kind of stirring it up on this, if you want to say that. But
Yes, sir.
So, when I think about this, I think of the challenge of, cumulative impacts, that the environmental management community has pondered for decades now, and it's kind of like a death by 1,000 cuts, where any one little given project by itself is not a big deal. But when you get enough of them adding up together, it becomes a significant environmental impact. So it's a matter of like, how do you, like John is arguing here, how do you kind of manage this for reasonableness? So in your example, if you were required for that, to do that easement, it wouldn't have made any environmental difference. But what about small property owners where it would have made an environmental difference if there was no easement there? Right, so I think you bring up a really good point and a really good example, but I just caution us against over extrapolating that example everywhere in the watershed district.
Yeah.
So I think we could, if we're gonna make a rule change or a policy change, I think we should really think about under what conditions can we possibly exempt an easement on a small private parcel?
And that was part of my question to John, is where has, by us having all these easements, where has that helped us with some additional environmental benefit in some way? So, I mean, it's a tough question. So.
Right, my general thought was what's the downside of doing this? And that's kind of what you pointed out.
Yeah.
So, I'm all for having a continued discussion on this so that we can get down, fine tune it. Because we certainly want to benefit the taxpayer and the constituent and make sure that somebody isn't getting overburdened. That's a theme in my mind over this. Yes, sir.
Something that came up earlier in the meeting, I believe Suzanne brought it up. And that is, how do we maintain assurances that future property owners are going to be aware of, you know, what the restrictions are and so on. And, you know, the easement certainly, you know, kind of is right there and long-term type of, you know, something that people will know about it when they buy a property. You know, if it's some other way in which we convey that information, I'm concerned about whether or not it really passes on from owner to owner. And, you know, and so, you know, that would be part of the consideration as well.
And that's where, you know, the easements on the BMPs, I have a lot less heartburn on that. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It's just where it's totally unrelated to the project at hand, you know, and the BMPs and all that. It's just that they happen to have a 100-year flood designation on part of their property, and they need to give up an easement, and not only give it up, but pay to get it done. So,
So we could potentially use professional judgment to determine whether a specific project is related to part of the property that's under the OHW versus not, which is exactly what your situation was. And so under those conditions, this board could consider waiving an easement because there's no work being done close to the OHW.
but the problem there is you're gonna hear from council that we're treating some people differently than others.
That actually raised a little bit of a flag for me, simply because it just shouldn't be subjective, right? So if there's criteria that engineering can look at and say, like you said, it's within this distance, but the point is it's underneath the 100-year flood elevation. So it's always gonna hit that marker because that's already the standard.
Yeah.
So the question is, if it's, nowhere near the building site. If someone has 5 acres of land and they're building in the northwest corner and the southwest, you know, the southeast corner has land below the 100-year flood elevation, does that need to be in an easement? And so if you would be wanting to say that it's not, then there should be some criteria to determine what is that? It shouldn't be it just shouldn't be subjective.
Well,
I mean, if there's like a surface hydrology analysis done showing that the proposed development in no way can impact the area below for example, say the property where the work is being done slopes in a different direction, it's not gonna go, unless they move an awful lot of earth, it's not gonna go anywhere near the 100-year elevation on the property. That's not subjective. That's an objective hydrologic analysis.
There's all sorts of criteria in your current rules with distances from certain things. So those seem like you could develop some criteria if that's what the managers would like.
Mr. Brock is certainly going to be at the forefront.
Yeah. Anyway, again, this is way more than we can handle here at this meeting tonight, but John's just looking for some guidance from the board to continue to accommodate my pestering or.
That's okay.
I'm just.
Did you have something? Yes, ma'am.
I only bring this up because I get these calls quite a bit, because the easements are often needing to happen before project closeout. So the project is done. And now, for whatever reason, the property owner didn't realize they needed to have an easement. And now they have to call their surveyor and get that legal description. That's when a lot of anger comes. So if something's being developed, I just want the managers to be cognizant of that when you talk about kind of public relations. And one thing that Manager Brock mentioned, and I'm not supporting it, I'm just throwing it out there, was paying for that cost for private landowners. Or other brainstorming, right? Or saying, read your permit. I mean, there's all sorts of
Right.
ways to consider that.
Yeah,
We can absorb that, and when somebody's purchasing property, I'd like to think that they become aware of everything, or the constraints, or everything that we're involved in, and we're part of the conversation or the rules and regs. So maybe we need to pursue that in fine tuning the policy about dealing with people with unnecessary easements, if that's the case. Sir,
I just wanted to emphasize what Attorney Forsyth said. I think that the complaint is really easement, that she gets are easements over rainwater gardens, BMPs, stormwater maintenance facilities.
Mhm.
I don't think you're getting complaints about easements over flood elevations, because any complaints about easements over flood elevations typically come before the managers issue the permit.
right,
And so if there's a way so that individuals don't have to hire a surveyor to get an easement over a rain garden, if that can be handled with a maintenance agreement that says you're responsible for maintenance, maintenance includes, don't fill the rain garden, don't put a shed on the rain garden, it's got to function as a rain garden. If that could legally be done, that seems like it'd be a much easier discussion with the property.
So, and again, I don't want to drag this out too much longer. What we talked about in our meeting the other day was maybe have some line that could be drawn that these simpler EMTs like rain gardens, maybe they would fall under a maintenance agreement. And then you get the more complex ones like the retention ponds for a major development, that sort of thing. Those we get easements on, and you know, we can draw that line in the rules and define that, where that line is very clearly, so that John could know where that is when he reviews a permit.
yes, sir.
yeah, I just want to be careful that that could be a small parcel of property that could have a potential strong impact. So I think we need to be careful about how we draw that line. That's my main argument. That's the whole, you know, cumulative impacts, death by 1,000 cuts syndrome. So any given project is going to have a tiny impact, but if there's a whole bunch of them, the cumulative impact is significant. So I think we try to find criteria that define the impact of a project environmentally versus benign. And one that, if it can be objective, if it could be rendered benign in an objective manner, then we could exempt that specific permit from an easement requirement.
Okay,
But
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
What I'd like to suggest is that we flesh this out a little bit further.
a subcommittee meeting or?
Right, and then once we get something that we're somewhat comfortable with and understand, maybe we have a workshop.
That's exactly where I was going.
And to where we as a board can really get into the weeds
Yeah.
on it. And
I think we should do that.
so that's my suggestion.
Okay, so another subcommittee meeting. I don't know how you guys feel about after April 16th.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll set that up. And then we'll move to a workshop. And then let's see what we can brainstorm and figure out. And with council herself, we could help, she could help us either rewrite policy or, as I've said already several times, fine tune what it is we're doing. But I'm also seeing this on a case by case basis. And we are not being subjective if we have criterion set up to get it done. Okay, is that good? You satisfied for now? Sir?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. let's move on to the Long Lake zebra mussels. Okay. Yes, and that's
Mr. President, as you heard, I think it was last December, Meg Grady was here and gave a little bit of a summary about the status
Right.
of zebra mussel management on Long Lake. Zebra mussels were found last November, and since then, Meg has been talking with DNR and others. The one group that she's been talking to is folks at the USGS, United States Geological Survey,
right.
and the Minnesota Aquatic and Invasive Species Research Center. They're looking for lakes to do research on regarding zebra mussel management. And Meg and I met with them and talked about Long Lake and some of the details of Long Lake and the watershed district's past management and water quality monitoring and aquatic plant monitoring. And there exists a long record of data on Long Lake, which impressed them. So they're looking for lakes to do some research on as far as whole lake zebra mussel treatment. They said that they would probably make a decision by now, but yet they haven't made a decision by now which lakes. And currently, Meg has talked with staff at the DNR about what it would take to get a permit to do whole lake aquatic plant treatment if it's outside of a research project, if somebody just wanted to do that. And they're not opposed to an entity doing that, but yet they don't have a tried mechanism to approve those kind of permits. And so they suggested using the existing lake vegetation management plan process. And Meg worked with Friends of Long Lake, right, to develop one of those lake vegetation management plans for dealing with aquatic plants. And so they suggested doing something similar for dealing with zebra mussels. And so that basically you document the information that you have and you submit that to the DNR, and then they make a decision on whether they approve the plan, basically.
Yeah. Now, where does that cost come in, $2,000? Is that for, providing information for them to, make a decision, or is it afterwards?
So that would be, and the cost would be preparing the lake vegetation management plan, so.
Okay.
preparing this whole thing. So that, I guess, Meg's request of the board is to consider authorizing her to create one of these lake vegetation management plans for managing zebra mussels if Long Lake is not chosen as one of these research.
I think that's a good plan so that we can keep things moving ahead. And it's a role that we've taken in the past in terms of technical information, providing that. My only concern would be that this in no way says that we're going to pay for the treatment as
Right.
an organization.
That's well established, right? No. Poor guy. You got it.
And it's, you guys have always been great to work with, and the support we're getting out of our and Meg is invaluable to us, really. Invaluable resource. So,
And-
yeah, if we can take a step to move towards creating another animal management plan for the mussels versus, it kind of goes alongside of what we're already doing on the aquatic side of vegetation, so.
Yes, sir.
If we can get our assistants to do that, then we'll be prepared in the event that we don't get onto the research program. So we're kind of getting some legwork done ahead of time. Would be
Yes.
great, so that we're
We
not
want to do that.
lose a whole season again, that's next April, and we're talking about the same thing, and maybe these are things that got out of hand.
If you lose a whole season, us downstream lakes are more susceptible.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
Trying to nip this thing in the bud as quick as we can, so,
We're very aware. That's a concern. Yes,
I just want to speak to the fact that what I'm reading here is very, very rigorous, which makes me feel good about it. And specifically structured decision-making is a very, very, very robust decision-making model. I've actually done it. I've actually went to Shepherdstown years ago and got a week's training from USGS, so it's great that they're doing that. That brings a lot of pretty robust rigor to this whole exercise, so, yeah.
Your being happy makes me happy.
We're not happy, everybody's happy. That helps.
And when? If I may, John, what do we need to do for you this evening, sir? Direct you, or we just stand by?
If you'd like, you could direct us as what's said in the
Right.
blue box in the memo.
I think it's so. That's not, that doesn't require a motion. Yeah, we need to get the ball. We want to stay ahead of it. I was frightened years ago when I saw they had a submerged shopping cart. They had on display at the fair,
Yeah.
covered in.
Covered.
Oh, yeah, oh, no. Yeah.
I
Stay
think we
safe.
only literally found, I think I found 5 or 6 at the end of the season.
Yeah. You need to take all that seriously. So.
Well, it's a lot easier to nip it in the bud at this stage than
Yeah.
to wait
Let's make sure you keep shopping carts out of the lake and.
Let's put it to the shopping.
For display, we'll put one on display.
The good news is that the zebra mussel and population of Mille Lacs has declined. It's gone from about 7 trillion down to about 4 trillion.
Well, they used to, I mean, like everything, as all life is, it all cycles and,
Yeah.
and they kind of, in the weeds do the same thing to a certain degree. We'll have
Yeah.
robust years when it's really bad if we don't do anything.
Right.
There's quite often an invasion peak and then they come back down, and still when they come down, they're still at an injurious level, mind you, but quite often when they're at the peak, it's worse. It's the worst you're gonna see from it.
We did the forest impact, so it's a big deal to us, and it's important.
Yeah.
For everything we're doing. Okay. Attorney. Counselor,
Sorry, I'm
or
just
counselors.
pulling up the memo we're talking about.
Sorry, counselor, you,
The web-
contemplate.
you know what? And I didn't get that memo that you sent, John. For some reason, the packet didn't come to us electronically, so.
Fax it to you. Like 2 different ways.
The fax comes
Well, charge, right? Well, charge. We get a.
Apologies. Okay, so you have before you, a memorandum that is from both our office and BAR. We developed it together. So I'll talk a little bit and then I'll hand it over to John because he has some information I certainly do not have. But as you know, the law recently changed in 2024, requiring new technical standards for web content to make it more ADA accessible. Because Valley Branch is a special purpose district, it does not need to comply until April 26th of 2027. So you have some time. And then I just wanted to let you know what some of the requirements are. If you need me to go through the memo, I can, but I assume you read a fair amount of it, if not all of it. But then really the next steps are to get the assessment of the current website and then determine who you want to use and how much it's going to cost to bring it up to compliance. But I'm actually going to pass it over to John, as he's done more on actually researching that, talking to Washington County.
Bang for our buck. Thank you, counselor. Yes, sir.
Managers, so I did attend a webinar on this topic a while back. And in that webinar, it was put on by folks in Stillwater, but it was a statewide or nationwide webinar, really. So I got a little bit of information there that is consistent with this memo. I also contacted Washington County and South Washington Watershed District, because some of the things on the website would be pretty easy to make ADA requirements. So there's requirements for, differentiation in color, so that like if your text is black on a white piece of paper, or if it's white on a darker piece of paper. And then there's also requirements if you have a table, you can't really have merged cells on a table. You know what that means. There has to be a line for everything. Some of those things would be relatively easy to work with Adobe or Word or other documents to make that happen. But there's other things on our website, like our web map, that is a map, and it has various layers that you can turn off and on that show different things, which would be really hard to try to explain to somebody who's blind what is going on in this map. So my specific question to Washington County and to South Washington Watershed District is, you guys also have maps. What are you doing in order to comply with this rule? And so they pointed me to a document that the state has put together. We haven't dug through that document of how much effort it would take to update the web map. It might be easier just to not have the web map on the website. And I think that a lot of information will be removed from websites in order to comply with this rule. Because it's just easier to remove it than it is to try to make it ADA compliant. Washington County and South Washington have a much larger population than Valley Branch, so they have to comply with this law a year earlier than Valley Branch Watershed District does. So that's just some additional background, but I think that the request tonight is to contact the people that put on this webinar that attended in Stillwater this spring and say, hey, you offered to give us a free analysis of our website. Could you please do that and let us know, what are the problem areas that we need fixing? Then once we know that, then we can work on what the cost, if you want to fix it and leave it on the website, or if you want to remove it from the website, what the cost would be to fix it. The law does allow you to put things that were created historically to an archive folder, but in order to conform, it has to be stuff that isn't used very frequently that gets put in that archive folder. So again, the request tonight is just to authorize us to contact somebody to do a free assessment of the website.
So that's just, you just directed.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
The map component is, one of the major areas where there's, the goodness concern. Will they be doing an evaluation there, or do we need to maybe get more information in that particular area, so we've got a clear picture of what the situation is?
I'm not sure, and so I think we can contact them and ask them specifically, or just ask them to review the whole website, and if they find the web map, and then I guess I don't know how detailed their review of the website is. If they'll just say, yeah, this needs work, or if they'll say exactly what kind of work, different pages or the web map.
I would hope we can say something like, we're particularly concerned about the web map. What other people think about that.
I think that, it's free, so they're going to do that. But also, my concern with that is they'll say, well, after evaluating this, you really need to do this. So we'll have to weigh that, and I don't know about a second opinion or whatever. I'm certainly no expert on any of this, but if we can get a comparison from the people that are already ADA compliant, then it seems simple that we can, go into this without too much trouble. Sir.
Second opinion or third opinion. I can't speak for her until I get home, but my wife Lynn was GIS coordinator for fisheries when they went through this very thing. So she's already been through it, I think. And she could probably have a quick chat with you and let you know. I don't remember it being that painful for the state to conform to this, so, but if you want, I can ask if she, and I can connect you by email. Sure,
Wow.
then I'll owe her some favor. Figure that out later.
Shaping up really good. So John, please, follow through with that. Also, we're gonna be in contact with Mrs. Vice President Pereira.
I'll check with Lynn and then
Please.
and I'm sure she'll say sure, and then I'll just connect you by email.
Great, thank you.
Whether she wants her state email or her home email, so.
I just want to state the obvious that, I mean, maps are essential, really, to
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
website.
Oh, yeah.
We have to figure out a way to have those and not have them archived somewhere where you can't see.
Right.
Yeah.
As a geographer, I agree.
Good enough, Richard. Okay, we're okay with that? The Brower. Yeah. See you, sir.
Just to add to that, I use that web map all the time in the field when I'm looking at things and say, wait, is this a floodplain? Is this in the FEMA floodplain? So I'll use that out in the field just as a double check when I'm looking at something. And so it'd be a shame to use that tool.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
from my perspective. I think if people are aware of it, it can be pretty handy for them. So.
Yeah, we want.
Yeah, conveyed a lot.
Yeah. There was not a report in the packet, but I do have some updates. Things are moving quickly this week, so there's lots happening out there this week. You may be aware of the Lake Elmo Elementary School is excavation work, tree cutting and grubbing has taken place, so that is off and running on the site. And so nothing really to report there other than they're up and running at the corner of 10th and Lake Elmo Avenue. Bridgewater Bank, there's been no activity over there. They were shut down for the winter and not much is happening over in that section of Lake Elmo. Kieran Drive Apartments in Woodbury is, they're working on the footings for the building right now, but everything's in place. That site has a lot of wetlands around it. They've done a nice job of putting in erosion control and fencing, so that looks solid.
This one is just south of 94.
Just south of 94, over by the Black Diamond site. It's in the Black Diamond site, actually, so it's in that whole wetland complex on the corner of Settlers Ridge and Hudson Road. Yeah, that's kind of down in there. There's a flat area that's not in the wetland or the floodplain, so that's off and running, but everything looks solid there. Out in Grant, there in the Gateway development, there's 2 houses left in that development under construction. One of them is next to the wetlands. They're missing some erosion control. I spoke to the contractors this week. Same over at Easton Village, their last phase, silt fence was missing along the moat, as we call it, the moat pond along Manning. So I've talked to the developer and the contractor about getting that replaced right away. I did stop over to the springs at Lake Elmo. As you remember, we've had some issues with water coming from that site down to the Tesla site in the past. They told us last fall that they repaired the leak. I checked it today and I think I need to do it while it's raining, but just to check that erosion site is pretty wet. I didn't see any signs of further erosion, but I do know that one of the solutions that Tesla group came up with, or the contractor, was that they put drain tile all along the curb below this erosion site that drains into the catch basin while it's running. So I don't know if that's just a matter of there's always water running through that area that's groundwater, or is there still something going on? So I guess stay tuned. I think I have to be there when it's really raining to see if something's really happening. So Silver Lake Outlet, I was out this week, cleaned out the channel, did a bunch of brush cutting and pruning so I could get in there. It was kind of overgrown, so there's a thin ice sign, Rick, I set up against the post if somebody wants to grab it for the city. It was stuck in the channel. I didn't know what to do with it, so I suppose I could drive it over to the city garage. Yeah. But anyway, that's all looking good. It's barely running, but it was a good time to clean that channel out before it becomes an issue. I did, on Monday, of course, we had a lot of water running that day. Sunnybrook Lake area looked good, no issues out there. Raleigh Creek was running within its banks, no issues there. Down in Afton, down my way, the south branch of Valley Creek, every ravine was running. I have, water that comes across my property as part of the Valley Creek drainage, all the way from Woodbury. And, everything was running in, talking with the neighbors down the way, it came up at least 3 feet over the banks.
Really?
Just like flashed. It came up 3 feet and then went down at the end of the day. So I can measure that because I know of a log bridge and the water was up and over the log bridge. So, it was-
And we're gonna get some action Friday night, I think, so.
yeah, but now these cool nights, as it's cooled down, it stopped that kind of that flash. Now things are drying up, they're infiltrating, the frost is starting to come out.
Yeah.
But that day was so warm that once everything got moving, it was really something to see. So, and then it was gone at the end of the day.
Nice.
So, yeah, I had to warn one neighbor down the street, I said, don't drive through your driveway. The drainage from Trading Post comes down into Valley Creek Trail through this gully and it washes across their driveway. Is right in the drainage path. I said, don't let your son drive that little Subaru through that water.
Oh, I thought it's up and then it freezes.
Yeah,
Like a skateboard.
you're not gonna make it through, so.
Oh,
Anyway, that's, those are just some highlights, lots of stuff happening now, this spring going, so. That's all I have.
very good, sir. Keep us posted. All is well. How are the girls? No activity yet?
The overwintered bees look, probably look the best I've had of an overwinter colony, so they're really going gangbusters, and with the help of Manager Brock helped me out with a little bit of, some feed for them, so I appreciate that. But they're really, I mean, they're flying. It's something to see.
You put on some stale beer. I'm kidding. That would be nice. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Inspector. All right, our next, issue is the Valley Branch branded apparel. Apparel. Does anybody have any ideas? No short jokes.
Just a
Yeah.
suggestion, I mean, if you want to use Heritage Embroidery, which I would suggest, they're a good outfit.
Yeah.
If we have our logo, just, there's a setup charge for them to do that for their embroidery machines. And then once that's set up, then anybody can order anything from them and they'll make it any kind of, so we don't have to do like a group thing or anything. You know, if you want camel shorts or whatever.
I do it.
You can do that, but that, as I looked at that, it just seemed to me like that might be the way to proceed, then just let everybody do whatever they want.
I'm up for that. And, we talked about, who's going to incur the cost? Is that for our education funds or how's this gonna work? I don't recall. Anybody?
Thought in the discussion, everybody was gonna be on their own, but
Oh, on their own? Okay.
but I don't know, maybe I just read that wrong.
Mr. President, the Watershed District has not purchased apparel in the past, so this is something new and you can develop your own policy. I think,
Okay.
Other organizations do have some policies. I could look into that if you'd like.
Talk about it, yeah.
I just suggested checking with South Washington or Cath Region to see what they do, see who they use.
And Mr. Vice President, I did, South Washington uses some place very similar to the Stillwater location in at, I can't remember if it was Newport or one of the communities in the former East Mississippi WMO area. But majors, I guess, if you'd like me to work with Heritage to send them the Valley Branch logo and get that set up, I can do that as well.
Please, yeah, that's a start. And then we could make determinations about getting roads or whatever it is we're gonna do. Yeah. Right?
I think ropes,
It'll
yeah.
all look like Gandalf sitting. Sorry, see not many movies. Okay. All right, so, that's that for now, and John, can express the developments there. And then, I guess at our next meeting, we can bring it up again, and then we can make determinations on how we're gonna handle this. You know, out-of-pocket costs or whatever it is, policy, and certainly the judicious use of taxpayer funds, right? Okay. Nothing new on the, so far, I have permission for the 21st. That's tentative, of course, because of my schedule and the tax returns and all that. Will the managers be able to attend the March 27th, April 10 meeting?
I talked to Savannah tonight about getting my location posted, which I will do. I will send an email with that location when I get home tonight.
You're gonna be in an airplane on your,
Oh, I'll be at a hotel in Ontario. Now, what could happen is I'm kind of phasing out on my Great Lakes stuff. I could potentially be asked to go to dinner with
I know.
with other people coming on board to take my, probably not, but Susanna said that as long as I'm posted, if I can't make the meeting because I get pulled out, I can't make the meeting.
I understand.
And if that happens, I'll send John a quick text so he knows. I doubt that's gonna happen, but it could.
Ladies, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
This
We'll
one
see
be
you in 2
a
weeks.
pleasure again. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
as always, that, thanks.
You bet. You're my favorite cowgirl.
Thank you.
Yeah, cue the horses.
I did the Luca thing. You weren't there for this. Ray Marshall was there. He didn't get laughed. And, he was not laughing. But she's a good sport. You know. Oh, I hate when the bosses do that, whatever. Okay, enough of that. We talked about the Wade Park thing. I made a comment. So far, so good. Mr. Brock, you will back me up in case I, another call on that.
So far, so
Sir.
You're gonna, if Ed can't make it, you're gonna carpool with me?
Sure.
Okay.
He's got a nice truck.
Well, I was gonna take a little dribble over y'all.
Dude, you're gonna be like this. I'm kidding. Okay.
it's still my car, not for any gas.
Oh, that's right.
Could do that.
So we're vehicle.
Got a different one.
Oh,
Here's the vote.
They don't, but not bad.
okay, one more item. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Aye.
You're adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody.